Yeah, okay, time to live free. Plenty goals I'm achieving. Some real life topics and talking financial freedom. Mindset, soul and love, everything in between. This is Freedom Podcast. Tune in, live free. Hey, got my mindset right and I got the drive. Planning one day, no more job, no more 9 to 5. Love money, mine. Love money, mine. This is freedom. Tune in, cause it's going down. Woo!
Hi, this is Anna, and welcome to another episode of Your Freedom Podcast. In this episode, I interview Karis Meier. Karis and her husband have 4 children and reside in North Virginia. She holds a BA in Christian education and an MA in counselling. She's a homemaker and spends her time writing, counselling and engaging in women's ministry. But Karis has struggled a lot with her chronic illness for many, many years, and she's passionate about sharing how God leads her through this journey. Her heart is to walk alongside others in their suffering and seek God's comfort and hope in that process. You're going to love this interview. Karis has really struggled, as I say, with her chronic illness, and it was so inspiring to hear her be so positive about her future. Thank you for listening. So, Karis, it is great to have you on the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
As I was just saying, as we were just gossiping before we click record, I love this podcast because it's just lovely to connect with people all over the globe. And I know you're in the East Coast. We're just talking about geography of the US. So it's just great to have you on and come and share your story. So thank you.
Yeah, good to be here.
So I know that you've had a challenging time. I'm kind of pointing it a little bit lightly, but do you want to share with the listeners what sort of has happened on your journey so far?
Yes. So I'll give a brief growing up history just because it kind of adds to what's happened later on. But I grew up, so my parents are missionaries. So we grew up kind of all over the place, moving around a lot, some overseas. We were in Philippines and Singapore, lived in Costa Rica for a while, and then also lived in the States, different places.
Which was your favorite, just out of interest, which was your favorite place?
My favorite place I've ever lived is Singapore. I loved Singapore.
You know what,
yeah.
My friends who live closely to me, they moved there for 3 years. So in 2019, before the pandemic, me and the boys went to go and visit them. It was just, I've been to China and Hong Kong with work, but Singapore, just lovely, really lovely.
It is.
Smaller than I thought, actually.
Yeah. It's very small. It's very small, but it's got like everything, and it's so compact. It just has so many things.
So clean everywhere.
It's so clean, so safe. I really enjoyed our time there.
Yeah, beautiful place. So that's a really good experience. So growing up, moving around like that is quite different, and you must have got a lot of experience from that.
Yeah, so it was definitely challenging in some ways. I was very introverted. So I think for me to have to, kind of make new friends and kind of be the new kid all the time was challenging, but it also prepared me for what was to come later on in life, which I ended up marrying a soldier in the Army and military. And so that made us very, what's the word? We had to move around a lot. So anyways, I'm skipping forward, but so I grew up kind of different places and then ended up going to college in Minnesota, which is northern, middle northern Minnesota or America. And then so shortly out of college, I married my husband, Ben, who, as I said, he was in the military. And, I grew up, I knew some stuff about the military, but I never had any experience with like personally knowing someone or, so it was a very new culture to me. It is like a new culture, basically, the military, because it has like their own language, their own acronyms, their own like little cities, the so it was
like a different world. One of my friends, her husband's in the military. In fact, I've got a couple of friends that have husbands in the military. So yeah, even though I don't fully understand it, I hear from them, you know. And there's obviously lots of different ranks, isn't there, as well? There's that culture of the ranks, which sometimes is quite challenging.
Yeah. So there was a lot to learn. And I actually, shortly after we got married was when I first started getting sick. I noticed it on our honeymoon and started having a lot of different symptoms, started losing weight. And then my husband deployed to Iraq for 15 months. And I just kept, going downhill, basically trying to figure out what was going. And my husband at the time was stationed in Alaska. So I moved up to Alaska and then he deployed to Iraq. So it was a very lonely, dark time. Those couple years trying to figure out. Eventually, they found out that I had picked up some different types of parasites when I had been in Pakistan a few months earlier.
Right.
And by that time, they had just done a lot of internal damage and gotten into my organs and different things. And so I did lots of different treatments and finally was able, got rid of them, the parasites. But by that time it had, I never recovered from that. I never was able to, I just lost my energy, couldn't really gain the weight back, just kind of felt lousy all the time, couldn't eat normally. And so went to doctor to doctor, trying to figure out what's wrong with me, why can't I get back on track? And that just started a long series of one kind of issue after the other with different organs. Really, I had pancreas and heart problems and kidney problems, and ended up on a feeding tube for a while. But in the middle of all this, so in the beginning, the doctors had told me that I could never have kids because of some of the conditions that I had. But we did get pregnant, and then ended up actually having 4 kids. So we do have 4 kids today, by miracle of God, I believe. But anyways, so there's a lot of
what was you, because I think my background, I worked for Pfizer for many years in the pharmaceutical industry. Not that I'm very pro pharmaceuticals, I'm going to say now. I think working in that industry sort of turned me the other way into more holistic stuff. And it's very rare that I try and avoid medicines with me and my boys, try and do natural things. It just sort of pushed me that way working in that industry. But I remember, obviously, a lot of my customers were doctors and nurses. And there was always this whole thing of like this revolving door patient that keeps coming back. And it can really increase sort of anxiety and depression. Because when you go to the doctors, you're looking for that solution, whether it be prescription for some drugs or just being told this is what you have. When there's these investigations going on, it just goes on and on. My mum at the moment's in a lot of pain with her hip, and she's not getting the answers, and I can hear it in her voice. She's in a lot of pain. So that must have been really difficult when you're, because when it's something fairly easy, like, I don't know, measles or chicken pox, or I suppose even when there was COVID going around, there was a test for it. It's like you've got the answer and then you can get some antibiotics or get some pain relief. But when it's something like you say, I remember having a tropical disease in my foot when I went to the Caribbean. I had a small cut that I didn't know about on my foot. And it was standing on some water that was probably not very good water, I don't know where the water, it was from the hotel. Coming out onto the beach, and there was a few of us, we went in a group, and a few of us got this, it was like a worm basically that came in. And I remember just that, it took quite a bit of investigation, and having to take these awful tablets because I was diagnosed with this tropical disease. So, but I managed to get it because obviously it was in my foot, I could see it visually, so it must have been difficult, one, trying to get something diagnosed, like you say, and also feeling like you've not got the answers and just feeling ill as well, and with your husband away. Thinking people who are listening to this that, might have had something where it's like, how did you keep on, how did you keep on going, really? Hard.
Yeah, I would say difficult is an understatement, and it is really, really hard. You really have to learn to be an advocate. And being in the military too, because we moved every 1 to 2 years, we still do. And so having to transfer, to a new doctor, and then they have to do all the new tests, and it's hard because every doctor has a different idea of, well, let's do this test, and then, actually, usually they just try to give medication. Like in the beginning, they tried to give me antidepressants, anti-anxiety. They're like, oh, you're just anxious, you're just depressed. And I took them. I'm like, okay, well, I'll try, so, and that's not bad. I'm not saying it's bad to try those things, but getting to the root.
Term, is it? It's not long term. It's like
no
things, and like you don't realize what the side effects.
Yes,
it's a seesaw balance, isn't it? To risk to benefit, and I think you have to. And then also you want a solution. You don't want to just be masking the symptoms. You want to know what's happening.
Exactly. So trying to get to the root of the problem, trying to find a doctor who actually cares and listens. And I had a lot of doctors who, basically were like, well, too bad. You just, you have to learn how to live with it, which is hard. It's hard to hear that when you feel like just getting through the day is hard. And on top of that, when you're feeling ill, it's hard, you do kind of just want to give up. You're like, well, whatever, and which is why also I think it's so important to have support, having somebody or other people who can be there, like my husband. And so when he came back, he was able to be more involved, which was very helpful. But it's very difficult when it's, when it's not a clear diagnosis, and and especially in explaining to other people too. A few years later, I was diagnosed with Lyme's disease, which causes, neuropathy and other things that I've dealt with, but that's more easy to explain, but it's just among this huge array of other issues going on. And so,
And
so,
also, when something goes, this is how I felt with what I went through, which I know is totally different. But when something's going on a long time, you start to feel a burden, or you feel like you're saying the same negative stuff to people. Like your close friends and family, and you only need, like you say, a couple of people you can lean on. But you feel. I felt like I was always apologising. And so sometimes it was probably just better off not speaking to anybody, because I didn't want to burden them, and I wanted to be positive. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, so that makes you go into yourself, and I think that's what a lot of people experience, whatever you go through, that you just go inwards, and don't socialize so much, and don't, there's all these different things that come out of it. And I think that's the difficult thing for people, really.
Yeah, I agree. I think, for many years, especially when I was really dealing with a lot of just feeling more depressed about it, I think I did turn inward a lot and didn't want to share anything because of just what you said, feeling. And when you're dealing with something that's chronic, it can start to feel like it's part of who you are, part of your personality, part of your identity, even though that's not the truth, because it's like that it feels so attached to your personhood, when it's in your body, which messes with your mind, and then you start to feel like shame.
No one really understands it as well, apart from you. People may have gone through something, but it's always different than yours, and it's like you're fighting to get that understanding a lot of the time, I think. So all of it is different. It's just important to express this, I think, for people who are listening who could be going through something similar, so that they know that it's totally normal to feel like that. And I always felt, because of my children and being a single parent, that I had to be strong all the time, just not getting upset or anything like that. So it's all built inside of me, and I can imagine with your husband being away, you'll have experienced that sort of being on your own. When he came back, it's great that you can share it, and obviously you're in touch when he's away, but I think You said you had 4 children, so I'm sure
Mhm.
you've sometimes felt like a single parent.
Oh yes. Well, I am a lot because he still travels and a
Yeah.
lot. So it's I get what you mean, and having to hold it all together. And something that I was, looking at different your podcast, and how you talk about love and self-care. And I think for many years I felt like that was selfish, especially as a mom. Like, it's hard to put your kids or your husbands or whatever needs, like, I always want to put them first, I think. But then I realized, after like getting burned out, and especially with my physical weaknesses, I need more rest than most people. So when I put the kids down for a nap, I can't go clean the house. I need to actually give myself rest. And just how important it is to care for ourselves, to show ourselves the same compassion that we show others, because otherwise we don't do as well. I mean, I know I don't do as well loving my kids if I'm not also taking care of myself. And so
I think it's a work in progress, because I talk about it a lot, but I'm still find myself sometimes like you say, if I'm tired, I feel like I've snapped at the children, not in some really nasty way, but not being as probably the understanding person I normally am. And I'm like, check, you need more sleep, or you need, I think it's like this constant thing, isn't it, that we always need to be working on. Because when people talk about balance, it's really hard to get the perfect balance. And I think it's fine to, some weeks be really focused on this, like really focused on, might be something that my son's just had exams. So I've been, really helping him and nagging him as well to get him and just really like focused on that. And then other weeks I'm like, I might be doing a launch in my business and I'm spending a lot of time doing a bit. So it's not like every day we have to have this perfect balance. It's just being aware of it a lot of the time. Like yourself say, not feeling selfish for filling our cup up first. But I think it is that natural woman mother instinct to just make sure everybody else is okay before ourselves, which can cause us to get the burnout. So yeah, it's interesting you listen to the other podcast, because I do talk a lot about those 3 pillars, because those are the 3 pillars that have helped me get equilibrium, which are freedom in love, which is self-care, self-love, and feeling like we like ourselves, you know what I mean? And then freedom in money, because, I've experienced up and down with money, and it's probably only like the last 5 years that everything has been really stable and it's growing and everything like that. So I think when it's not about money, financial freedom is the whole thing, but when you have money struggles, it's stressful, So and then mindset, which the word mindset just doesn't encompass what I mean, because it's not about being positive all the time, but it's just about being able to recognize that actually I'm just having a bad day. This is a really tough day, but tomorrow might be better. So just hang in there. But it's not just about being able to flip that negative into positive, because sometimes you're just gonna feel through it and allow yourself to just feel shit. I think.
I think that's so important, because in the beginning, and I think part of it was we were talking about earlier, not wanting to be a burden to others or not come across as complaining. But I think I held a lot of my, I would say, like, negative emotions or feelings in, and just was like, oh, I'll just be positive. I'll just put on a smile. I'll just pretend everything's okay, which is not really authentic, or it's not going to really help anyone. So I think, our mindset is, our minds and our brains are so powerful. Like, they hold so much power over our whole bodies, which I love all the studies, like the neuroscience studies they've been doing recently. I've been reading a lot of books about it, and just find it fascinating how the brain works and how it changes us. But I think, so not just like a simplicity, like, oh, have a positive mindset, but the thoughts that we think are so powerful. Are we thinking thoughts that are life-giving to ourselves and others? Are we thinking, things that we can be, what is our focus? Which I think for me,
the conscious and the unconscious as well. It's like when you study this stuff, you become like a bit of an expert in it. And then you think, like, I've had it where I'm like, I'm feeling like I'm positive, but I know I'm not, because I've woken up in the middle of the night or stressed out or something, or I just know that there's this subconscious that's playing tricks on me, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's the challenge, isn't it? Especially when you do the work on all this, because you've got that awareness a bit more. And sometimes it's hard to help the subconscious.
Oh, it's it's really hard.
Yeah, exactly. So I know that you've also written a book, haven't you?
Yeah.
So tell us about that, because did you get to the point where you've managed to manage the health issues that you have?
So it's interesting. I started writing about 5 years ago. I felt inspired, and I felt like God was calling me to start writing. So I didn't know I didn't consider myself a writer, but I knew a lot of people who were suffering, and I started a Facebook group, and I started a blog called Suffering Well, and just started writing a lot of things that I was learning, things that I was going through, things that I was struggling with, and had a lot of positive feedback in that, realizing how many people suffer silently and don't, isolate and don't realize that there's other people also, who are going through things. And then the beginning of this year, I looked back at my computer and all that I'd written. I think I had like 85 pages. And I was like, I could put this into a book. And so I just joined a self-publishing school and started writing, kind of using a lot of the stuff that I had written over the years, and putting it together. And so I launched the book in October. It's called Suffering Redeemed: Finding Strength to Endure, Purpose in Pain, and Hope for Tomorrow. So,
Brilliant.
yeah.
Because I do a lot of physical products on Amazon, I've also written a few books, and that I've done self-publishing on Amazon, and also notebooks and journals and that kind of thing. And I think it's just fascinating that we can create these things with the knowledge and the experience that we've been through, So congratulations on
Thank you.
your book and being an author. And for people who are listening to this, who would the book be for? Like, who would it be great?
Yes. So for me personally, most of my struggle has been with chronic illness, although I've also struggled with anxiety and depression alongside of that. But it's very broad in the way that I write it. So it could be for anyone who's, whether you're grieving or, struggling with mental or physical illness, or, just loss. There's so many different issues in this world that cause us hardship. And if you're living in this world, I think anyone who is living could read it. But it offers a lot of. So I am a Christian, and so I do reference scripture, which has really been helpful for me in getting through a lot of my difficulty, just providing hope, providing guidance, providing wisdom, so that's kind of, but it's a lot of processing through challenging questions that I think a lot of people ask when they're suffering, especially in a long-term type of scenario, and just very real, very authentic. I don't think I have all the answers, and I'm still living it. When you ask if I'm managing it, I mean, I'm living day by day, but I'm still struggling quite a bit. But I've learned how to live well, even in the struggle.
Yeah. Which I think is you're halfway there, aren't you? If you're able to do that, I think. Yeah. It's, we don't know what's around the corner, all of us, and I think managing things that happen, just hearing, other people that have been through different things, it is always about that kind of like being able to manage it, and being aware of all our different feelings and things, and just giving ourselves a break, because I think we beat ourselves up too much about wanting to be this person or this, we're just going to be ourselves and allow ourselves not to be perfect, I think. So I think really anybody that's listening to this that follows the podcast and follows the show would love to read your book, just hearing about it. So we'll put Karis's book details in the show notes. So if you are listening to us on iTunes or any of the podcast channels, you'll see it in the show notes. If you're watching us on YouTube, hello, you'll be able to see in the comments section, there'll be a link to grab Karis's book. And I know you've also got a blog, haven't you?
Yeah, so it's on my website, which is just my first and last name, karismeier.com. And my blog is on there, as well as the book details and some other information.
Yeah. And is there anything else that are you on the socials? Is there anything else you want to mention for people who come and follow you or get involved with any of the work you're doing?
Sure. I am on Instagram. My handle is Karis_ashes to beauty, which I can send that on to you and you can put it in the show notes also. And then I'm also on Facebook, Karis Meier, author.
Yeah, perfect. So yeah, well, if you want to check out Karis and follow her, we'll put her Instagram and Facebook details below. But yeah, it's great to have you on the show because I think like I was saying at the beginning, I think by sharing our stories, it really does help other people who might be at the beginning of going through something, because that first part of our journey, and when we look, it is all a journey, isn't it? It's like there's things that still trigger me now when I feel like I've recovered from, the sort of the abuse and all that kind of stuff. But something can just suddenly happen and stop me in my tracks. And I think it is that whole being able to break it down and manage it, knowing that I'm not perfect and I might have startled or, anxious about something. So yeah, I think it's just really important because I think it just really helps other people who could be listening to this, who could be going through something that might not be the same, but they just can relate to what we're saying from the kind of challenging times that we've been through, or the dark sides that we've been through. So I always ask everybody, because it's the Freedom Podcast, and I did kind of worry about calling this podcast Your Freedom Podcast, because there's a lot of things online that's, all about earning money that's like, hey, create freedom, really like, and I didn't want to give it that connotation, but I just kept coming back to the word freedom from my personal journey. And I think, when you do get through different things that we go through, it's more like freeness in our mind a lot of the time, isn't it? Being our own thoughts. So what does freedom mean to you, Karis? Because I know it means different things to other people.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and it was challenging to think about. So thank you for the question. Yeah, I think it's a few things. One is just being able to live each day to its fullest without feeling controlled or enslaved by other, by expectations or by people or negative emotions. So being able to live each day to its fullest. And then also, I think being able to express fully who you are. We're each unique and created differently, and I think being able to celebrate that, being able to love ourselves, to love each other well in a way that is meaningful. I think that is freedom, and then also being able to look expectantly to the future. Look with hope. Live with hope. So that's what I would say.
Yeah. No, you got a lot. You got a lot there, and they're all. I'm agreeing with them all, and especially kind of being able to just be yourself, be authentic. I think it's taken me a while to get to that point. When I look back at the old version of me, I was always bothered about what other people thought about me, and I still am to a certain extent. Like if someone's started sending me hate messages in my Facebook inbox, it would bother me. But I'm kind of not bothered about the opinions of society so much, and the pressures that we put on it's what we put on ourselves. We get in our own way a lot of the time, don't we?
Yes.
So I think it's all a journey, but it's really, really interesting hearing how you've managed to stay strong. And I know probably sometimes you haven't felt strong, but you are strong to, one, be able to talk about all of this, and also put a book together and the blog that you're doing, and actually still be getting through sort of day to day managing, the symptoms that I'm sure that you're going through. So, and just being able to talk about it, gives a lot of strength. So completely commend you, because I know it's also not easy writing a book. It takes a while. So commend you for that. But thank you ever so much for coming on the show.
Yeah.
And inspiring all my listeners with the journey that you've been through.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, keep in touch. We can help you in any way.
Okay.
And thank you ever so much for connecting and coming on. So everybody go and check out Karis's book. Go and follow her on the socials. And again, thank you ever so much, Karis, for coming on the show.
Hey, thank you for listening. Hope you had a blast. Here to elevate your life. It's the Freedom Podcast. Love, money, mine. Love, money, mine. Wanna see you all win. Wanna see you all shine. Just make sure that you subscribe. Bringing good vibes. Join the Facebook group. Now it's time to change your life. Hope you come back. Right now is the chance. This is an experience. It's the Freedom Podcast. Hey. Hey, thank you for listening. Hope you had a blast. Here to elevate your life. It's the Freedom Podcast. Love, money, mine. Love, money, mine. Wanna see you all win. Wanna see you all shine. Just make sure that you subscribe. Bringing good vibes. Join the Facebook group. Now it's time to change your life. Hope you come back. Right now is the chance. This is an experience. It's the Freedom Podcast. Hey.